Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. I am your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Events, and welcome to our podcast show today. Now, if you've been with us over the last couple of years, you'll realize what we do is we kind of take an individual horror film and we kind of take it apart. We critique, analyze, and we have a general conversation about the film. Now, that being said, I normally bring on a guest judge to actually assist with that, and my guest judge is different every episode. I'm the only consistency, which allows you to get a different perspective of these movies every episode, which is why we hope that you've been listening to a whole bunch of the episodes that have come before now. Now, that being said, the episode we're going to be, or the movie we're going to be discussing today is, actually, I think it's a well-known movie, and it's a well-liked movie, and that movie is 30 Days of Night, based on the graphic novel comic book series. And to discuss the movie with me is Sarah Panazzo. We want to thank Sarah for coming back to the show.
Hi, Kevin.
All right, excellent. So, if you've been following our show, you know that we've done a lot of vampire films, but this is a different type of vampire, which is why we're going to have a really fun discussion about this today. I'm hoping that Panazzo likes the movie as much as I do, but we'll see, because we both read the graphic novel upon which the film is based on. So, Panazzo, what are some of your thoughts and your ideals behind the film 30 Days Night?
So this is probably one of my favorite vampire films, maybe not adaptations, super true to the original source material, but if you are looking for a not Twilight vampire movie, because we had a long time where all we got were like vampire romances. And this was a big one where it is just
Visceral.
straight, and all of the rules of vampires go straight out the window.
Uh-huh. I will agree with that. I think that's why the original comic book was so popular, is because it was a very visceral experience. I mean, very minimalistic in terms of dialogue. It was more or less a very action driven. It was a very fast read. I remember reading it when it first came out, and I was really ecstatic and excited that someone had bothered to make a movie of it. Especially considering, as everyone knows, I'm not a big vampire fan, but I am a huge fan of 30 Days a Night.
But yeah, it's a fun watch. It is super gory, and I mean, it takes place in one of the most reasonable areas you would expect a vampire movie to take place, which is in Alaska, when they've got their 30 days of darkness. And the sun literally does not come up and shine, so what else would be prime feeding time for vampires than to just live in eternal darkness?
Yep. Now, the great thing about this is that these are not gentle vampires here. These vampires are vicious, and they're bloodthirsty and hungry, and they will rip and tear at anything that is not like them, which is what makes it such an interesting film to watch.
Yeah, like I said, most of the rules go straight out the window. There's no like, oh, you can just hide in your home and not invite them in. They will literally plow through the side of your house to get to you. It doesn't matter. There are no rules. They will eat whoever. They will kill whoever. They don't want to leave survivors so that they can stay hidden. But yeah, it's got some really good kills. It gets really gory, and just seeing the comparison between the bright red snow spots where all the blood is compared to the white, just vastness of the snowstorms, it's very chilling.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, it's actually, in my opinion, I think it's a very smart script, especially beginning on the film. And if you've never seen this before, we're going to tell you a little bit about this. But essentially, they send in a stranger first into town on the eve of the day where most of the townspeople are leaving, because they're going to start when the sun goes down. It's not going to be back up for the next 30 days. So half the town is leaving. And then, of course, this stranger comes into town from a ship that's been, I guess, marooned into the ice in the middle of nowhere. So he walks into town, and he goes about disabling all the cell phones and stealing all the cell phones, and then, killing all the dogs, and more or less prepping the town for the arrival of the vampires. Very similar to what happens in Salem's Lot.
Yeah, you've got like gas tanks are being cut so that people can't use power, they can't fuel their cars. Um, it
Helicopters destroyed.
The helicopters destroyed, so basically getting rid of any way to leave this town.
And that's all the setup, which comes into play because the main characters, Eben and Stellar, are police, and Billy, I think the other is Billy. Yeah, they're the only police in the town after the sun goes down permanently for 30 days. Eben's slowly learning what's going on by investigating these weird incidences that are all happening within the same, I guess 12 hours is really easy.
Yeah, not even. I mean, it's like one incident after another. People are finding weird stuff, or the dogs are all dead, or whatever else. People are starting to disappear. And that's when it all comes to a head because the town is literally shutting down for these 30 days of night. People are leaving town because they can't handle it. The flights in and out are canceled because it is so dark and so cold that they cannot safely bring planes in and out of the area. So you're literally on lockdown for a month where you are stuck in darkness in this town with nothing coming in and out.
Yeah. And they don't even allow you to drink alcohol during this time period because they know what can happen with people who get cabin fever. Those subtle details like that are actually what makes this a very well-written script because, and they make comment about this. Eben makes comment of the people. They know how to live in that environment because they've been doing it for so long. And the way they survive is by these rules that they created for themselves. It makes for, because this has a lot of characters in it, it makes for a much more interesting ensemble as well. So
yes, because it also helps then that like it's not the entire town that goes missing then or anything like that. It's a portion of the town that somebody's going to come back after all this is done and see something happen to this town. There has to be an excuse why this happened, but you've got people boarding up their homes, which helps with everything else in the future. Like you said, these people are used to living like this. They're used to having to chip in with each other of like, oh shit, I ran out of gas because this emergency happened. And then the people come together to help each other.
Yeah. And which also plays in the part with the Bo character because he's lived so far away from everyone else. Early in the film, Eben gives him a citation, and it's to remind him that he's part of the town. Those subtle details like that gives a little bit oomph to the actual story itself. I don't remember if all these details were in the actual comic book graphic novel, but it makes for a much more interesting film to watch. I've read a lot of Steve Niles' work over the decades now, and sometimes there's some of these details are in there, some of them aren't, because some of the stories are so visceral and they're very fast paced that some of these smaller details sometimes may get overlooked. But I remember the actual graphic novel being like the craziest, most visceral thing I had I've read before. I was like, dude, this is crazy, and that was before all the subsequent sequels and everything else that he's done since then with 30 Days a Night. So
well, and as part of that, it was initially pitched as a comic. Nobody wanted to buy it, so he pitched it as a movie. Sam Raimi got interested in that, but still companies wouldn't buy it. Eventually IDW Publishing bought the story from him and he did the comics. And then he was coming on as the main writer for the film with Sam Raimi to like make the script better. He wanted to full flesh out all of these characters and give full stories and everything like that. But based on the director, a lot of that went away.
Oh, really?
Yes. So we had Steve Niles, who was the original comic author, also did October Faction and multiple other comics. And then Stuart Beattie was the script rewriter after whatever company bought the film rights. So Stuart Beattie did Collateral, Pirates of the Caribbean 1, Australia, I, Frankenstein, Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show. So he's written some pretty good stuff. And Niles loved it. He said it was a very faithful rewrite. But then Sam Raimi left directing and just produced. David Slade moved in to direct, and he decided to bring his usual writer Brian Nelson on, who did Hard Candy with him and a couple of other things. But Nelson wrote it much differently than the comics, and Slade considered Nelson's to be more faithful of an adaptation to the graphic novel than the OG writer Niles is with Beatties. And he said, I've had to be more naturalistic than the graphic novel because it is so over the top. So like you were saying, because it's so visceral, he was like, no, I need to tone it down and make it an actual story so it's not just viciousness 24/7, which it helps, but I would have been interested to see exactly how they would have adapted it word for word.
Interesting. Well, if they had, I would think it'd probably closer to be something like the second half of From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yes.
Because that's how I imagined it, as being something like that. I mean, we don't get these type of vampire films that often, so it's always refreshing when we do. And this one had, like From Dusk Till Dawn, has such a unique premise that you can't help but enjoy it. But for From Dusk Till Dawn fans, that's more of a, damn, this is just an entertainingly good fucking film. And for me, 30 Days a Night, the movie, actually works really well as both a written film and a vampire film and everything else. I'm glad that it's a very visceral film, because I would have really missed that from the comic book. But I think toning it down was probably a good idea. I would, like I said, David Slade had done Hard Candy, where there's almost no violence really in that movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because David Slade also did Twilight #3, so he really did both spectrums of the vampire genre.
Yeah, I know. At the time when that one came out, that was the most violent one of those three movies.
But this movie, it's fantastic. It's gory. It's vicious. The actors are just fantastic. I mean, Josh Hartnett in his prime. I'm glad he's made a comeback because he is fantastic. Danny Huston is the head vampire, is just amazing because he is such a good bad guy, and it really works in this movie. The way that they have created their vampires are very scary, with the shark eyes and the gnarly teeth, and it's more of a virus that can spread through scratching and such, because they even make comments to make sure you take the head off of anybody you kill so that they don't transform.
Yeah, I know. I like that. No, I had forgotten that when I rewatched. I was like, oh yeah, shit. I forget how visceral this movie is. They gotta kill everyone because they might all come back and they have to deal with twice as many fucking vampires. Which, since we see several of the townspeople become vampires in this film, and some of them get some very, graphic demises.
Yeah, I mean the self-sacrifice alone, knowing that it's like watching any zombie movie where you're going to transform. You are just waiting for it to happen and take me out while I am still knowing what is going on before I lose everything.
No, that's a good point to make. I didn't think about that, but you're absolutely right. It is very much like if someone gets infected by a zombie and then you have to wait because they know it's coming. And that's a great example.
You get the darkness of them having to kill the other people before they transform, but then you also get the humanness of it, like Billy's character, the other police officer who kills his wife and children in preparation because he hears what's happening, he sees what's happening, and he doesn't want it to happen to them. So you get this darkness of humanity that the vampires even talk about, where Beau's character decides he can't fight an unstoppable force, so he decides to do something else about it. And just the comments it has on humanity alone in this movie is very dark, but very realistic.
Yeah, because you have a lot of people who actually sacrifice themselves for the betterment of the town. Beau being one of them. Towards the end, makes a huge sacrifice towards the end, and it kind of brings back those themes from the very beginning, where Evan was trying to make sure that whole theme about being a town and being one person in that regard, which flows through the whole film, just makes the film the characters in the film so much richer because Bo, who likes to be a loner, a hermit out in the middle of nowhere, sacrifices himself for the betterment of the other townspeople, the other survivors, towards the end of the film. And of
He
course,
sees what's happening at the beginning and he comes in and swoops in to save people. I
yeah,
mean, it really is about a small town coming together and what it means to be part of a family that is a town like that.
yeah, and where normally you're watching these type of movies where you get a bunch of people who can't get along and can't come up with a solution to their problems.
Every man for themselves. They're tripping each other so they can survive and get away. And there is not any of that in here. Like the vampires try to persuade them to come out with bait and other versions, and it really is a true test of humanity and how this can go completely differently if it was a bad group of people in this situation.
Yeah, and actually, and that's one of those elements I'm not sure was in the original graphic novel, because it was only 3 issues long.
Yeah, I got to go back. I know it's got a huge expanded universe now with TV shows, a straight to home video movie that we pretend doesn't exist. But then there's multiple other like graphic novels and just novelizations that have spun out from this because of how popular it was. And I hate that it kind of
Fizzled.
flared out because it could have been a fantastic franchise to keep going with.
Yeah. And if so, anyone listening, if you're a studio, if you were actually able to get the rights for this series and actually convert it into a television series, you have plenty of material to do that with, since the story continues past the first story arc in the comic book. I always wished the second film, Dark Days, which is based on the comic book, the sequel, but doesn't really follow that at all. If they kept going, they would have had such a rich franchise. But
well, and as popular as like Walking Dead got, because this was before that even, this was like one of the first big like non-superhero graphic novels to become a movie. And after the whole Walking Dead thing, this could easily be a 30 episode season of how these people escape the town through the novelization and then going into the prequel, sequel, whatever.
Yeah.
Past that, because it is such a unique problem to have.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this and you've never seen the movie 30 Days a Night, we implore you to go see it. I mean, unless you just hate vampire films, and even everyone knows I hate most vampire films, but I love this one. I think they did such a really good job with putting the whole film together. I like you said, I think Josh Hartnett is at the top of his game at this film, and he's given so much to work with in this film, even with his co-stars and the scenes with him and Danny Houston, where you're just seeing Danny Houston watch this guy who keeps surviving. He keeps surviving when everyone else he gets killed easily, but this police officer keeps surviving,
fighting the entire movie. And I mean, the cast is great. It's a great like collaborative cast. And I always put this, like, I have people ask me all the time, they're like, okay, well, I went and saw Nosferatu for Christmas this year, and it's like, yeah, that's a great, like, I don't want to say full-fledged romance, but the romanticized vampire. And people always ask, well, where are the vicious vampires? And it's right here. It is a simple movie, simple premise, and it is so well thought out, and it is so damn good.
Yeah,
it was always at the top of my list of, like, if you want real full-fledged vampires where you're getting graphic and gore, this is probably the number one I can think of besides Let Me In, or Let the Right One In. Sorry.
I would put either one of those. I like them both. The thing about this movie is that even though you may think that there is a lull in certain parts, there really isn't a lull for that long. It's like they have a moment to breathe. These survivors, who are the ones hiding out because they know the vampire is going to be there for the next 30 days, are hiding out. So there's a couple lull moments, but they're not really, because the vampires are like, fuck you, we need to set a trap so we can get these humans out of there. And so it's a very little bit of time before the vampires set up yet another trap to get them to reveal themselves.
And that's the one thing that I forgot about rewatching this is how you do have those down parts. You would almost think that this entire movie takes place in one day, the way that it is shot, but they start putting in the like, okay, day 17, day 28, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot that this is like an entire month of these people trying to deal with this and trying to hide, trying not to starve. And it is just intense.
Yeah, it is. Because the first trap that they mentioned, the one young lady they try to get to yell out, and no one answers. Now our survivors that we follow in the movie are not the only ones, because we see some of the other ones later on. But there are other people too, but they're just as scared to come out and help this woman. And obviously she gets torn up to bits eventually. But
yeah, I mean, based on everything else, like you said, like you view it happen to one person, you know you're not going to be saved. I mean, they don't even save the stranger who comes in as a human entry to become one of them because he is not deemed worthy.
Yeah. And we need to come back to Stranger because I love Ben Foster as his role. But I wanted to mention the other person because at the end of the movie they try to do the same trick again, but with a young girl. And at that point, they're using a child to get them to come out of hiding. And of course, Melissa George's character Stella, who is the husband of Eben, our main guy, actually does come out and try and save her, but then she gets trapped, and has to have someone save her from imminent doom or death, or however
Yeah.
you place it in this movie. But in theory, these vampires are not dumb. They've used a grown-up woman first, and then they use a child. And like, they're learning that they just couldn't go into town and sniff out all the people and kill them all. And unlike some of the other film, they can smell blood, but I guess they can't smell blood unless it's running or some shit, because they don't find everybody just by going through the houses.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like, it's also interesting seeing the difference in the early vampires of some of the townsfolk who have changed, where they're just hungry. They're just blind with hunger. And so, like, one gets trapped really easily and stupidly. But then you see the older vampires who are like, oh no, I know exactly how this is going to go. I know how to plan this. So it's very interesting to watch each of the different hunting techniques that they try and do throughout the entire film.
Yeah, I should have looked up the characters' names for the one female and male vampire that are always next to Marlowe, which is played by
Yeah.
Danny Houston, but I can't remember their names to save my life. But there are two specific vampires who just steal like every scene they're in. They're completely bloodied up the entire time, black eyes and everything, and they look like they're on the hunt. Um, they're all on the hunt, to be fair, but these
Yeah,
two
but
in
like
particular.
the guy you're talking about, I kept thinking he was a wolf, and then I figured out no, he has the whole thing of a snake where he moves his entire head to
Yes.
smell the area, and it's really, really creepy. Um, and there's so much like subtext that like the little girl vampire they initially run into might have been, um, what's his name's Magnus, I think, or Marlowe, sorry.
Marlo.
Marlowe, the head vampire, and his wife or whatever, it may or may not have been their daughter. There's a whole family aspect of keeping their pack together as well. So like all the vampires only have single names, which is also really interesting. But yeah, it's the characteristics you get with each of these different vampires too are so different but so similar. And then they've got their whole secret clicking language that
Yes.
they actually created for the movie. So it's really, it's different, and it's a good different.
Yeah, I love that aspect that they're speaking in their own little language that no one else understands. I thought that was really creative because essentially they're vampires, so they were originally human, but at some point they have their own little language. Like the vampires is a species that has its own language that's developed between them that only they understand. I really like that concept. So if you want something different, this is definitely it. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the stranger played by Ben Foster, who is the is it Stryker in is it the Stryker character in
Uh,
Sandlot? The one who's the guardian for the vampire. I should know this. I just watched fucking the new Salem's Lot the other week, but the stranger acts like that type of character. He's the protector. He's the one who goes out there and finds them food. He sets everything up for them only because he hopes to become one eventually. But he's not aware that that's not ever going to be the plan that they use him for. He is I don't want to say familiar because that's more with witches. What's the term that
it's like the Renfield character.
yeah, he's like, I don't know, I can't remember what they call it.
Yeah.
He's like the Renfield character who really wants to be a vampire and will do anything that they tell him to do if he can become a vampire. And so even he's demented. Like he actually sounds like he's actually been starving to death the entire time too. We actually don't see him eat anything. He's not eating flies or any of that shit like Renfield probably would be doing. He just seems like a normal person. Just the tolls of not eating definitely look on him, or cleaning or bathing or anything like that, because these vampires are not clean. You would think that the blood on their faces has been there for God knows how long, because they ain't taking a bath after they feed. They are
No, it's not like other ones. Like, and it's constantly like you'll look at them and they are very well dressed, and then all of a sudden they're drenched in blood and more blood and more blood, and it's the whole. They are more like animals where it doesn't matter. You don't have to clean yourself off. This is what you do to survive.
yeah, yeah. Which is really cool for this movie because we haven't. I don't know what you thought about the stranger, played by Ben Foster. I like Ben Foster.
I love him. He's great. They actually liked him so much. He was supposed to die earlier in the film, but they liked Ben Foster so much they wrote his character in a bit longer to keep him on.
Yeah, and he has some really like poignant scenes. Not poignant, but really nerve inducing scenes because of the stuff that he says to Evan, especially.
Mm-hmm.
Like the foreshadowing and just little tidbits. And that's where the great conversation pieces between him and Evan. And Evan's like, just let him stay there and die, which should not be what a cop says. But
No.
after he finds I think it was Gus. I think he finds Gus's head on the pike.
He comes back and he's like, "What the fuck are you guys doing?"
Yeah, he's like, dude, he doesn't care what happens to the stranger. Let him stay there and die. I was like, that's a unique change on the main character.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, the stranger's not part of his town, so he doesn't.
Yeah, and
he doesn't care.
it's part of that whole thing of doing for the better of their family. Essentially, is they are doing what they know they need to do to protect those people.
Mm-hmm.
For the entire movie, and I mean, it's people aren't making stupid mistakes. They're making some emotional mistakes.
Yes, emotional mistakes.
There's not a lot of stupidity in this movie either.
No, I think and that's what gets him in trouble is the emotional stakes. Like when the one guy whose father is senile, the father ends up venturing off because he doesn't understand what's really going on, and of course the son, because he cares so much for his father, goes out to look for him, and unfortunately he gets eaten, killed, however you want to play, by the vampires. But that's like, you care about that because essentially they've been setting that up. His father is a little bit senile from the very first moment you see these two characters, and his son's like taking care of him during this entire time where there's going to be 30 days of night. And that's just the way they've always lived. And then this happens and he still cares no matter if it costs him his own life or not. That whole sense of self-sacrifice runs through the entire film, and it makes you feel closer to these characters. So, the other thing I want to talk about, especially after we talk about Ben Foster, because I love Ben Foster, is some of the cinematography in regards to the snow. You've already mentioned it, and you hinted about it with all the way the blood runs on the snow because it's white, and it's such a huge, great contrast. And it plays a huge part in the film overall, especially when we start seeing the massacre that happens in the town.
The whole flyover of the town in that scene is just brilliantly done. It's gorgeously shot. You're literally just watching madness unfold.
Yeah.
then seeing the aftermath of it still just staying there time after time after time it's gruesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and then, there's the one scene where the only way that the survivors who are trying to get to a place that's more safe than where they were before is that they can only move during a snowstorm, a snow blizzard, because vampires obviously have never had to deal with that before, so they all are hiding. Whereas these people, they've lived with it their entire lives, and that's the only time that they feel that they have cover to move. And you're seeing them go through the snowstorm, and the cinematography looks amazing for this type of film, because vampires ain't coming out at that time because fucking get blown away. They don't know what to do. They don't have to react to that.
Well, there's that, and the fact that like the storm can hide their tracks, can hide the noise that they are making. So it makes them easier to move than when it's still outside. But the snowstorm adds a whole other danger to the movie of you've got people who are then freezing to death because there's no power, there's no food, there's no running water, there's no heat. So it's everything that could possibly go bad is all happening at once.
Yeah, yeah. Especially on these characters who are essentially stuck for a long period of time without the provisions to keep alive. And I it's just one of those atmospheres where it almost starts off like on a dread, because first thing you see is the stranger and the freaking ship that's stranded, and it just goes downhill from there the further along the movie you get. Even to the very end, which is one of the most tragic movies I've seen in a vampire film in a long time.
Yeah, it always reminds me of The Mist.
Yeah.
And that everything that you could do, you did, but it still won't stop the ending that's coming.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not as heartbreaking as much as The Mist, because that's just damn near just tragic as shit. But this does have a tragic ending to it. Yes. And this, yeah, but it's a beautiful ending.
It is, and based on how the graphic novels can go and their whole lines of truth, you could see the ending in a whole different light in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really interesting and could be a future building part of a franchise for it if they wanted to go back into it. But overall, I mean, Josh Hartnett's performance in all of this is just fantastic. I know he did most of his own stunts for the film, but man, I was so glad when he came back for Penny Dreadfuls, because he is such a great actor to watch.
He is an underrated actor. That's because I think early in his career, he was trying to branch out to do all types of movies. Some of them successful, some of them not. But this one, in my opinion, was probably one of the highlights of his early career. And thankfully, he's been doing a lot of great stuff since then.
Yes.
So that's good. But mentioning that end sequence, I wanted to come back to the very first sequence, because in the very beginning of the film, towards the beginning, it's not the very, very beginning, you see Josh Hartnett's Eben with Billy as they're watching the sun go down for the last time for 30 days. And it's a very beautifully shot film sequence and everything. But as the audience member, you see all the impending doom that's coming, that you already know is coming when that sun goes down. That doom is also there again at the very end, although it's a little bit more beautifully realized, because Eben and Stella are watching the sun rise, but we know that now Eben's going to die. And the thing that I thought was really, really good on David Slade's part when directing that is that we actually see all that pain in both Eben and Stella, because you can see Eben just crying out in pain, and then you see Stella, who's holding on to him tight and refusing to let go. Like it almost feels like, you're with a person who's slowly dying, an old person dying, and you're there for them when they're at their time of need. So it's one of those tragic yet beautiful endings to this film, because unlike The Mist doesn't have a beautiful ending. It just has a fucking tragic ending.
Well, and then going off of that, Kevin, like, I really appreciate that you've got these characters who had a relationship and they hint at what may or may not have happened, but they don't go full blown into the relationship. They know something is going wrong. They know what they need to do, and they can only hope for the best for each other, especially. And like we said, the emotional thinking is what gets them into more mishaps than not. But they don't spend the entire movie trying to explain this relationship.
No. No, it is a background, but it's pertinent background to how these characters react. That's what I like, because it's funny at first in the very beginning when all their friends in the town comment on the fact that they're not together, and like you get these commentaries from everyone throughout the entire beginning sequence before all the shit hits the fan, and that's enough to know that they're having issues, and their issues are big enough so that Stella originally wants to leave the town before it becomes 30 days a night and they're trapped. But she accident happened and she can't leave town, but she's forced to. And then Eben, of course, has the option to go. That option when she gets stranded, he has the option to go pick her up, but decides not to. He sends Billy to go pick her up because whatever their issues is, he's not willing to talk about it. She's not willing to talk about it until they're forced to talk about it, but without actually describing what it is their issue is.
Yeah, I feel like there's hints of what may or may not have been the issue, especially when they have the kid appear at the end. Like, you can kind of piece two and two together without them fully explaining what may or may not have happened with their relationship. But like you said, we get a lot of characters. We learn a lot of just general background to understand motivations for these people without them having to do a full-fledged story for every single person.
No, but I mean, one of the great things is that you get enough about each of them so that when they like we've already talked about the Bo character, but Billy's character, he mentions that Stella could stay at his wife's house if she doesn't want to stay with Eben, and then of course that scene where we see Billy and he's had to kill his wife and kids. It's so much more heartbreaking because we already know how much he cares about his family from having mentioned it with Stella. I could see that, and you bring up a good point when Stella goes out there to save the kid at the very ending, that it may have had to do with, them moving on and having kids or something like that. And that would make a little bit more sense. But, because we don't actually know for sure, it's just one of those little things that we can think about based on what we have seen going on throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, I mean, and besides that, like we said, there's like all these other characters that you feel for throughout the entire night or the entire month. But there's I can't remember the character's name, but there's the guy whose wife and kids are in another city. That the entire movie he's just trying to get back to his wife and kids, and then when he's finally turned into a vampire, he's like, "No, please kill me." And then he reveals that they've been dead for a while. And he didn't know how to survive, but now he cannot survive for eternity, knowing that's what happened with them and not being able to join them. So there are so many different shiny aspects of humanity in this movie. It's, like we said, it's really well written. It is very emotional if you want it to be, but it is gory.
Now, speaking about the gore, because we touched upon some of the gore in this movie, this is really effective gore.
Yes.
Like, this isn't just gore for gore's sakes, but I mean, not since probably, I don't know what slasher movie had an axe in it. Has the axe been used so expertly in this movie to kill and lop off heads of vampires? And it made it really very realistic, because a lot of people think that you can probably chop off someone's head with one swack of the axe, but this film makes it seem as though, one swipe ain't gonna do it. You're gonna need to do it a couple times, if not 4 or 5 times, because when you see some of these vampires get their head chopped off with an axe, it's like, damn.
Yeah, it takes some time, and and the way that the vampires go to town on the people, it's very animalistic. It is very vicious. It's not the like, "Oh, I'm gonna just bite you once and it's fine," but they're like tearing open throats and like ripping heads off so that they can't turn. So it is gory.
Yeah. Oh, and you brought up earlier about the vampires being smart. One of the first things that they do, husband and wife, is they pull the wife through the window of one of the houses, and then they're passing her off underneath the houses from one vampire to the next. Like, they're hunters. They don't just automatically kill all the time, but they made it so that they're getting him, the husband, to come outside, and so they eventually can get him. I don't think they get him at that point. They think they get him later on.
So
he's the one.
they don't get him. They manage to scratch and infect him during
Yeah,
that
yeah.
scene, and then that's where
If I remember his
Evan
name, I
has
would
to
be able
deal
to.
with him later.
Yeah, which is also important in the story aspects. But yeah, the ideal that that the vampires actually have like techniques that they perfected over the years of killing people to actually hunt and kill these people and borrow um, is actually really cool. I mean, I've never seen another movie where the fucking vampires take people and then pass them off to other vampires. Like, you don't see that in other movies,
No.
or the vampires who climb above the houses throughout, and that's where they watch the townspeople from. Is they're on top of roofs and everything. They
Yeah,
jump
like they
roof.
literally are a hunting party watching and using their bait to pull out other victims. So it is very interesting to watch.
All right, so I'm trying to think of any other things that we have not discussed in this film, because I believe that a lot of people are probably thinking this is a great movie, and we probably should go see it now, which we hope you will go see it now.
Yes.
The sequels and spin-offs, and I think there's a short little web series like thing as well, if I remember correctly. There's a web series that they did in between the two movies to prep the advertised Dark Days. There's a lot of content out there. It's a little sad that, like we said before, that there hasn't been a franchise or something to extend this past what it is, and so sometimes, these type of films get forgotten um through time, which is really sad. But any other thoughts about this film? Because we want people to remember this one.
No, if you haven't seen it already, get out there and see it. It is probably one of the darker vampire films you will ever see. It is well written, it's well acted, it's an intense story. There's plenty of gore for those people who love it. But if you are looking for something that is not romantic vampires and you want to see vampires just like go to town, this is your movie.
All right. So I'm gonna say that I love this movie as well. The thing is that this movie is very effective in my opinion. Not being just a great horror film, not being just a great vampire film, not being just a great film technically wise, all the techniques coming into play. But this is a good film whether or not you're a fan of the genre or not. I think this is one that, if you're looking for a horror film and you're looking for something that's a little bit different, but a little bit familiar, this is definitely one of those type of films. We know that the vampire genre is one of the most popular for the general public. But this film itself is not one of the most popular ways of going to that type of story, which makes it really interesting for a general audience to watch it. Now, the first film was very successful, so a lot of people did go to the movie to see this different type of movie, probably because they've all seen Twilight and we're sick of that. But that being said, the movie still.
Actually, I believe this was before Twilight.
I don't know. There's like 5 Twilight movies. Are you sure about that? You know what? I don't know anymore. I just know there's like 5 of those movies out there. No, I could have sworn this was at least Eclipse. The third one with David Slade directing was after this. I kind of want to say that he did that after he did this movie.
2008 was when the first Twilight movie came out, so a full year after.
Oh my God, that's not that long.
I know.
God, Jesus, isn't that crazy? We went from this to Twilight. How crazy is that?
I know.
Oh, and that could be another reason why this franchise died out fast, is because everyone Well, I kept thinking it was the other way around, but it could be because so many people wanted Twilight. And
They wanted romanticized vampires, but
put a stake to my heart, please, with those romanticized vampires. All right, so yes, by all means, go out there and check this one out. We actually think this is actually a great example of a vampire film and a horror film and a general film that I think most audiences will enjoy. With that, we'd like to rate the film, because normally that's what we like to do here. We like to rate the film between 1 to 5 stars. 1 star being poor, 5 stars being excellent. Where on the spectrum do you place this film, 30 Days a Night, Miss Panazzo?
easily 5 out of 5. Like I said, this movie is fantastic. I recommend it to anybody who wants to see gory vampires or who love vampires in general. It is a fantastic movie, and I do recommend reading the graphic novel at some point.
So you're funny because see, I thought I was gonna be the only one giving it a 5-star. You don't give to me movies a 5-star.
I love vampires, and this is one of my favorites.
See, because I don't like vampire stories, but this one is absolutely one of my favorites.
There you go. Both ends of the spectrum. Love it or hate vampires, you need to watch this movie.
Yes. So, you know what? I want to thank you for joining me on this conversation in horror, which we discussed the 30 Days of Night. We'll have to eventually get around to the second one, just so that people know to avoid that one. Look at her. If you can see her, she's shaking her head no. So I have to get someone else to watch the second one. But for everyone out there listening, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you go back and check out some of the other episodes that we've done. We've done a lot of vampire movies in the past. So you'll have a great pickings for the different types of stuff that we've watched. Make sure to check out any of our general episodes, as we've tackled a lot of different horror films, whether they are comedy, visceral horror, gore, or what have you. Check them out on your favorite podcast app, Spotify or YouTube. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, do that thing you do with your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. Regular episodes are every Wednesday at 8 a.m. If we have a themed month, those specially themed episodes come out on Mondays at 8 a.m. Make sure to check out our sister podcast, Conversations in 4Color, which delves into comic books, manga, and graphic novels. That is our Patreon exclusive podcast, so you have to be a subscriber or a follower to listen to that podcast. But make sure you do. So with that, I want to thank you for joining us on Conversation in Horror. Make sure to leave some comments if you have films that you would like us to discuss, because we are always in the mood for new films. So everyone out there, have a great day, and I will see you on the next episode. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.